My name is Alexander Nietzsche. I am a current grad student at the University of Denver. I am in the Master's of Marketing program. The session I'm going to be talking about today is Introducing Gen Alpha, a brand new key audience. This was given by Joanna Piacenza from Morning Consult. So this session I found to be actually quite informative because this is a whole new key target market for marketers to actually be able to look at and understand how to better target their content for. So being able to actually get some firsthand data that's being collected was actually very eye-opening and nice to actually see. One of the first things they talked about was how defining what Gen Alpha is exactly. They defined it for their company and their researchers' purposes from anyone born from 2013 to 2024. And they also stated that it's not a universally set thing, that some people may say, oh, Gen Alpha started in 2010 when the iPad released, or in 2012 after like 15 years past like when Gen Z started. It's not universally agreed upon, but that's when their data starts. And so they also want to talk about how they were able to research and get their data. A lot of them talked about how they, in the end, had to talk with Gen Alpha parents, who were mostly millennials, to be able to really understand exactly, the purchasing habits, because they're all still children. I don't think there's any one of them older than 10 right now, or 11, I guess it's 2024. So then from that, they were able to talk about exactly the Gen Alpha's brand preferences, their media and entertainment habits, their purchasing influence when it comes to their own parents and how they convince their parents to spend money. And they also said that this generation's their parents of Gen Alpha, mostly millennials, a little bit of Gen X, and a few Gen Z, have all been kind of talking about how exactly they're going to raise it and a lot of the focuses. And they said it's differed from previous generations in the fact that the main top priorities are that their children are physically safe, they grow up in a stable family, and they're honest and have integrity. Now, these values do sound like pretty good things and pretty universal things that you really wouldn't think of by generation. And while those values were up there when they did surveys of other generations, they were not the top three. There were other things that different generations had valued more. Now, for the rest of the lecture, honestly, there wasn't really too much actual discussion. It was mostly going over different statistics about Gen Alpha just to give people a better understanding over the priorities. So I'm going to go through my list here and just kind of talk about instead just some of the ones that jumped out at me. So it said that 47% of parents of Gen Alpha's children are financially fraught, which means they grew up in a setting where they weren't very financially stable. And in result, that's also partially how they're raising their kids, which is impacting how their kids engage with different products and brands and media. They've also talked about how, compared to other generations, already 46% of older Gen Alphas request grocery store and snacks by brand name, not just, oh, chips or whatever. They're actually like, no, I want the Cheetos. No, I want the Lay's specifically. And another one thing that actually surprised me and a lot of the audience there was 58% of Gen Alpha parents say they involve their children in choosing which activities to participate in while traveling. For me, this one surprised me because as a child, that was where we went on vacation. If we traveled, if we got to do anything, that was not to me. That was planned by the parent, and most of the people in the room had a shared experience with that. So it was very eye-opening to see that there's a more different approach of having and involving children in the process for participating in activities from day one. And so they also talked about how about 49% of Gen Alpha owns a tablet and 1 in 5 owns a VR headset, showing that this is really going to be the first technology that's not just adept with using like technology, but is actually going to be born with it, having been used it their entire lives, which is going to drastically change how they use it and how they interact. Another thing that they talked about that surprised me is just how strong a preference Gen Alpha has when it comes to brands compared to any other demographic. Because when it came to some of the results, they had some of the kids within Gen Alpha had a higher brand like importance, like preference and opinions with it than some of the people like adults within like Gen Z or millennials did, because they had just didn't always know it's this way, this is how we want it, this is how we know it's good, and this is the only thing they'll accept. And so they also talked about how Gen Alpha is a lot more pickier when it comes to most of the things they do, which has kind of led for just a big pivot in how consumers are just having to approach advertising, especially now that they're finally growing into the age where they're going to be teenagers, going to be soon having access to their own money and their own finances. So they can actually start targeting them and selling to them more accurately. Overall, I found this lecture actually very informative. It was nice to see all the different data, have a much better understanding as to the different habits of Gen Alpha and exactly why they have such strong brand preferences. This is definitely one that, if there's any video or footage of it, I would definitely recommend getting the opportunity to go see, as it was very insightful, and I think it would be very helpful for just those interested in marketing, especially in the future once this generation is really in the market.